Hi, hello everyone, and welcome on this video. Ideally, you should have watched my second video about text management before watching this one. I'm going to recover an example that I used, and we are going to see what really happened back then. You might have got something fishy, especially if you played with the nodes yourself. I didn't talk about a small detail that I wanted to have separately here, because it isn't about text management. This video is about execution flow, or execution graph. I will use my global variable nodes to explain this important concept in ComfyUI. But it can also apply to many other nodes as well. Here we have a good opportunity to talk and learn about it. Let's take a previous example with my global variable nodes from my previous video. We will just add some values there. These are going to be 4 values for 4 different variables. We are going to send them to my split node. And every part will be the value of the variable. We will connect all of them to a set variable node. So we are creating 4 syntax to create 4 variables. And let's connect each of them with a save global variable node. We will, of course, add the load global variable node and show its output. We will put that in a specific file name. Let's give it a very bad name, OOO. So I put that everywhere and also in the global load node. I will give a different name for each variable. Again, we are doing very bad names. I'm going to put A, B, C, and D in uppercase. Not that it matters much. So when I launch this workflow, the funny thing is that the result is empty. Why do you think that is? I can give you a hint. It has nothing to do about my nodes specifically. My nodes are doing exactly what they are supposed to do. So do you have an idea why we have that? And yes, that's the subject of this video. It is all about the execution flow. You are in charge of your execution flow. The nodes are not. The execution flow comes from the workflow you made. So it isn't about the node independently, it is about the interaction between them. In this workflow, the load global variable node is loading the variable file before the save nodes. So because the load is executing before the save, it is just loading an empty file. The file is then updated with my save variable nodes. If I launch the same workflow again, here I have the correct results, because the variables were set in the first workflow run. So now the load node have the values from the previous run, but they are not up to date with the current workflow. These values come from the first run. So why does this happen? This is because the load global variable node is a starting node. It has no input, just like load image, load checkpoints, or other nodes like that. Without any input, ComfyUI doesn't really know when this node should be executed. These independent nodes, if you will, can cause unexpected results in your workflows. For the nodes that have required inputs, it isn't a problem. ComfyUI understands that it needs to process everything before the creation of this input. If you send a text to a node, like for example one of my combined text node, ComfyUI will create this text before executing the combined text node, because it understands that combined text node should not run without the value ready as input. But again, for the nodes with no inputs, ComfyUI has no idea when to launch it. This is why in my load global variable node, I have an optional connect workflow input. With this input, you can tell ComfyUI that everything before this node is required. So you basically use the spaghettis to control the execution flow. Let me show you this execution flow in more details. I will reload the global variables every time they are set. And we are going to run that. So here the result is good. C equals C, D equal D, B equal B, and A equals A. But isn't it weird that it starts with C? It's like C, D, B, A. But worse than that are the values here even from our current run. Or from the previous one. Let's make it obvious by putting XXXX as updated value. I run that, and here it's a weird mess. We solved our execution flow problem here, because we have some X, but we didn't solve it entirely. Some values were recovered, but not all of them. And of course, in this case, we want to recover the variables. So to make it clear, we have some X here, and this is because of the connect workflow connection. It creates a connection between save and load node. This means that the load node are not going to be executed before the connected save node. But when you have a squid workflow like this one, I call it squid, like one input and many outputs. This workflow has a clear and obvious start, which is the right text node I put on the left. But for the dead-end nodes, ComfyUI will just make them happen, no question asked. And here the execution flow is still a problem. But the workflow behaves just as expected. It is our workflow that is bad. To be clear, our problem here is that every load node needs to have the updated values from all the save variable nodes. We want, in order of execution, save, 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 and then load, 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 load. If we add this order, for save followed by for load, we will have all the correct values in every load. But it isn't what is happening in this workflow. Here we have save, load, save, load, save, load, and save, load. By connecting save and load, we connect save and load together. But that's about it. So the last node of the execution flow will have all the updated values. The node here that is at the end of a save load, save load, save load, save load is the one at the top. You can see it has all the updated values. So is this the one we should use? And we just remove the others? Absolutely not. What I'm showing you in this video is exactly what you don't want to do. As a general rule in ComfyUI, you should always avoid squids when you can. Especially in this case, because the nodes are interdependent. What you should do instead is to have a clean workflow. A clean workflow. The execution flow is supposed to be going from point A to point B. You might have some split at the end, but they should be avoided if you can. In this situation, we don't want that. It isn't necessary at all. The trick we can use here is, for example, to use only one save variable now. So we can just remove all of that and create a clean workflow from point A to point B. A clean execution flow. We have several variables, so we are going to combine them with my combine text node. And once they are all set and ready, we will send them to my combine text node. Load is already connected to the save variable node, so it will be executed after. To be perfectly clear, in this case, there is no data sent in between save node and load node. The variables are stored on your machine. This is why you can delete the save node if you don't want it, and you can use the load node with no inputs. This link doesn't send anything. It is used only to control the execution flow. So in here, load is always executed after save. We have one load, one save, so it should work. We should always have data that is updated by save node. Let's try it. Let's put new everywhere. And here you go. This workflow is a much cleaner one. In ComfyUI, you need to be careful not to create a spaghetti nightmare. So learning about making a clean workflow is something very important to know. You should be careful about thinking about how you're going to create your workflow, or the squid might get you. This new workflow is much simpler and very easy to read. When you make a workflow, avoid being messy as much as you can. Your workflow should have a clear path from point A to point B, with an obvious beginning and obvious end. If a piece of your workflow is getting complicated, just create a group, but still, it will have a clear input and a clear output. That's it for the explanation on the execution workflow. If you like my work, you can find every details on my Ko-fi page. And we'll be able to find all my work on AI and education. I'll see you soon. Have a good one.